The atmosphere in the jiu-jitsu class that day felt different for Simone Williams. It wasn't just the intensity of the training or the usual banter among the members. It was something deeper, a discomfort, an undercurrent that gnawed at her throughout the warm-up drills and the sparring sessions. As a black woman in a predominantly white martial arts community, Simone had faced her share of challenges. But today was different. She had been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ, for over 5 years. She had started like anyone else, drawn to the discipline, intrigued by the physical challenge, the mental strategy, and the empowerment it offered. She quickly fell in love with BJJ's philosophy, a beautiful dance of technique, leverage, and the understanding that strength doesn't come from size alone, but from strategy and timing. She had dedicated countless hours to mastering the techniques, developing her body, and learning the intricacies of each move. Despite her love for the sport, Simone knew that her journey as a black woman in a field dominated by white practitioners was going to be difficult. She was no stranger to subtle looks, whispered comments, and microaggressions, each one a reminder that in many spaces she was an outsider. But she had always pushed forward, focused on her goals, determined to prove herself not to anyone else, but to herself. The grind of early morning practices, late night drilling, and the constant balancing act of school, work, and training had become a rhythm that she embraced. On this particular day, however, the stares felt sharper. She couldn't ignore the whispers from a few of her classmates, their eyes lingering on her in ways that were unmistakably dismissive. At first, she thought it was just in her head, a reaction to her own insecurities, but then she overheard one of the white belts, a young man named Kyle, speaking to another in hushed tones. "I don't know why she's here. It's not like she's going to make it to black belt anyway," Kyle said, barely concealing his amusement. Simone felt her heart rate spike, but she kept her composure. She had heard comments like this before, and she had learned to ignore them. What stung the most was not the ignorance, because she had encountered plenty of that in her time, but the fact that they thought she didn't belong. This wasn't just any regular class. Today, her instructor, Professor Miguel, had arranged a special sparring session with the black belts to give the higher ranks an opportunity to test themselves and challenge their skills. Simone had been training for this moment for weeks. This was her chance to prove to herself and everyone else that she could go toe-to-toe with some of the best in the gym. As the class moved into the sparring portion, Simone felt the weight of the room on her shoulders. The atmosphere seemed to intensify. There was a new challenge before her. Not just the physical test of sparring, but the emotional burden of proving she had earned her spot in this space. She glanced at the mat where several black belts stood, waiting for their turn. Her gaze lingered on one of them, Andre, a seasoned practitioner and one of the top competitors in the gym. He had been a black belt for over 10 years and had won numerous tournaments. Simone had always admired him from a distance, quietly acknowledging his skill and experience. "Simone, you're up," Professor Miguel called, pulling her from her thoughts. She stepped onto the mat with a deep breath, locking eyes with Andre. The space around them seemed to shrink, the noise of the gym fading into the background. Andre gave her a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the challenge ahead. Simone's mind sharpened, the years of practice, the techniques she had drilled into her body, coming into focus. The bell rang and the match began. Andre came at her with speed, trying to overpower her with his size and strength. Simone was smaller, but she was quick. She ducked and weaved, using her opponent's momentum against him. She moved with precision, remembering every detail of their previous sparring sessions. Simone had learned to use her agility, her ability to anticipate and react swiftly to every move her opponent made. She stayed low to the ground, using her leverage and technique to escape from Andre's grips. For the first few moments, it was a back-and-forth battle. Andre tried to trap her in various holds, but Simone was relentless. Every time he thought he had her, she slipped away, moving with the flow of the fight. The class watched in silence, unable to take their eyes off the action unfolding before them. Then, in an instant, something clicked. Simone saw an opening, a small gap in Andre's defense that only she could recognize. Without hesitation, she executed a perfect sweep, flipping Andre onto his back. Before he could react, Simone was already in position, transitioning seamlessly into an armbar. The entire class gasped as Simone locked in the submission. Andre struggled, but it was too late. The pressure from Simone's technique was precise, controlled, and relentless. He tapped out in seconds, the signal that he had been defeated. The gym was silent for a beat before the room erupted in cheers. Simone stood over Andre, her face a mixture of disbelief and triumph. She had done it. In just 14 seconds, she had submitted a black belt. It wasn't just a victory in a match, it was a victory over every doubter, every person who had ever made her feel like she didn't belong. She had proven that no matter her race, gender, or background, she could compete at the highest level. Andre, still catching his breath, looked up at her with respect in his eyes. "That was impressive," he said, his voice laced with genuine admiration. Simone extended her hand to help him up, and in that moment, it wasn't just about the fight. It was about the respect earned through skill, determination, and resilience. She had proven herself, but more than that, she had rewritten the narrative for herself and for others who might one day feel like they didn't belong in spaces dominated by those who didn't look like them. As she walked off the mat, her heart pounding with the adrenaline of the moment, she caught the eye of Kyle, the young white belt who had made that comment earlier. His face was a mixture of shock and awe. He didn't say a word, but his expression spoke volumes. Simone's victory had done more than just silence him. It had shattered the assumptions he and others had held about who belonged in the sport and who didn't. Professor Miguel approached her with a proud smile. "You've earned your place here, Simone," he said. And in that moment, Simone knew that she had.